The Colts fired Gus Bradley on just a couple days ago. Defensive coordinator, we expected him to be gone. Jim Irsay released a statement effectively touching on the idea that his general manager, Chris Ballard, and head coach Shane Steichen were going to stay. It was implied that Anthony Richardson was likely going to remain on the team as well, but he did not mention Gus Bradley by name, and just a day later, Gus Bradley is fired, or at least they part ways in whatever way that you want to describe that as. Like I said, this was expected. Something on the sidelines in the press box next year is going to be different, right? Even if Chris Ballard is retained, even if Shane Steichen's retained, even if Anthony Richardson is retained, even if Jim Irsay comes back, which obviously he would, something's going to change, and that's going to be the defensive coordinator, and that is going to be significant because the offense didn't do half bad against the Giants, but we let the Giants score over 40, right? The offense, incredible against the Titans. Titans had a chance because we let them score over 30, primarily in the second half. So Gus Bradley's going to be fired, and the question now is who could replace him, right? Who could replace Gus Bradley as defensive coordinator on the Indianapolis Colts? There's a lot of possible job candidates. The Indy Star did a really great comprehensive piece on this. They put like 8 to 10 names on there. I thought that was incredible. First of all, I want to go over what my criteria for a new defensive coordinator would be. Here is what I want to see from a defensive coordinator. I want them to be oriented in the pass defense. I want them to be oriented in pass coverages. I want that to be their primary area of concern or their primary area of expertise, perhaps. Especially if this is paired with a splash signing at defensive back. I saw a rumor, Marshawn Lattimore to the Colts. Would that be great? Yes. The one thing about Chris Ballard, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot the last couple of days, is we got Stephon Gilmore. And I remember when that signing happened, I was a freshman, and I remember being I was on air. I was live on the radio. I was talking about sports, and I was talking about the NFL draft, I believe. And then right then, in that moment, there's a couple guys coming down the hallway. They're showing through the window on their phone, Stephon Gilmore to the Colts, and we freaked out on air. And I remember Chris Ballard, that being a move that he made that he's been largely afraid of for the majority of his tenure, right? Chris Ballard he's typically a guy that drafts very well, but he's never a guy to potentially make moves in free agency or make some of those blockbuster trades. You see other teams making massive moves, signing massive deals for key players, key receivers, key quarterbacks, key defensive backs, things like that. And Chris Ballard just hasn't done that. And the one time he really did, the one time he pulled someone from another team was Stephon Gilmore, and that was fantastic until it wasn't. And Stephon Gilmore had some injury problems and really fell off, and that wasn't what we wanted to see. But if we had prime Stephon Gilmore on this Colts team right now, our secondary would be totally fine. And maybe not totally fine, but with a new defensive coordinator and prime Stephon Gilmore, we'd be fantastic. So the question is, can we find another free agency or through the trading block? Can we find another defensive back like that who's going to be incredible and top 10, top 15, top 20 in the league at their position, and pair that with the defensive coordinator that can can scheme up pass coverages and really use that pass defense to their advantage? That's what I want to see. I want to see a defensive coordinator come in that's oriented in the passing game, and I want to see a splash signing at defensive back, whether that's Marshawn Lattimore, whether that's anybody else. I mean, I wanted Terrion Arnold in the draft. I remember I wanted a corner in the draft, real bad. We got an edge rusher, that was great, and that really sets up our front seven. Latu is of course fantastic, but I want to see a pass defense oriented defensive coordinator, and I want to see a splash signing at defensive back. We have talent up front. I think we're largely fine up front. Maybe you can add some more depth pieces or some rotation players, but what we want to see improved is the secondary. I want to boost in the secondary with a defensive coordinator that knows how to use a good secondary, and another key player in the NFL to make that secondary great. We're going to need someone that's going to be able to remedy the discipline and effort issues at play, right? That's one of the major issues with the Colts. Pat McAfee has spoken a lot on that recently. Steichen prefers the ideology of limiting explosive plays rather than being aggressive, right? And fundamentally what that could break down to is if you blitz, you leave open space. So it's aggressive to blitz and get after the quarterback, but if you're playing an elite quarterback, as sometimes we often do have to, then you're leaving open space for explosive plays behind the blitz. So theoretically, right, if you rush for and drop the rest of the team basically into coverage, then you're limiting those explosive plays while still getting some level of pressure on the quarterback. That's the concept that Steichen prefers. So it'd be nice if there was someone that was compatible with that. Now, whether or not that's the right concept and the right ideology to have in the NFL this year in 2025 or have in the NFL at all is up for debate, but that's what Steichen prefers, and as long as Steichen is on this team, that's what we sort of would like to work around, right? So I got 4 names, 3 real names and 1 kind of a reachy name that I want to bring up as people that I think could replace Gus Bradley as defensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts. Number 1 is Chris Hewitt. Chris Hewitt, Ravens assistant head coach, secondary coach, passing game coordinator. He's a no-nonsense guy. He was a big hitter, kind of like Ray Lewis if you want to look at the Ravens. And he maintains that mindset, right? So this is where I could see the discipline and effort issues potentially being fixed when you have Chris Hewitt in the saddle there. He's also secondary focused. I think that the Ravens assistant head coach, anyone that's named an assistant head coach as a secondary coach, has got to be great at their job. I think if we can steal Chris Hewitt from the Ravens, we could potentially be in a much better position moving forward. The second one that jumps out to me is Aubrey Pleasant. He's the Rams assistant head coach, defensive backs coach, passing game coordinator. He's effectively the head coach during the preseason. I think this is really cool from the Rams. Sean McVay basically takes a step back in the preseason and says, okay, it's Coach Pleasant, it's Aubrey Pleasant, it's his time to sort of coach the team during the preseason, and that typically goes very, very well. He's a leader of men. Sean McVay loves him, and he's passing game oriented. So potentially a great leader, potentially has experience at being on the sidelines, doing a consistent amount of work there live as the game is occurring, and he's passing game oriented. Aubrey Pleasant from the Rams is a great option as well. Daniel Bullocks is the 49ers defensive backs coach. His team, the 49ers, have been elite at intercepting the football. They're one of the best at the league at intercepting passes. He's lauded by players. Daniel Bullocks potentially could be someone that we look at. I would say the Colts secondary would appreciate more fundamental reworks, right? Things like tackling and giving up explosive plays after the catch are what are most significantly harming the Colts right now. Turnovers are largely more okay, but that's splitting hairs. Daniel Bullocks would be incredible regardless. Those are my top 3. Chris Hewitt, Aubrey Pleasant, Daniel Bullocks are the best hires I can think of in the NFL right now. And a 4th one that I just want to throw out there is Ron Rivera. He has said in some interview, some press conference of some kind, that he misses the schematic and teaching side of football. The part of being a head coach has to do with personnel and roster composition and things like that is maybe a little bit more off what he wants for his life right now, theoretically. But he said that he misses the schematic and teaching side of football. He's had 7 top 10 defenses in the NFL in the past. Maybe he's a bit too strong of a personality or a power. I only say that because he's used to being a head coach, right? So it'd be essentially like having 2 head coach type personalities in the room, which could work out because Shane Steichen's offense, Ron Rivera is defense, but maybe that adds to some sort of a clash of power or some upsetment of balance, things like that. Regardless, I think those are my 4. Chris Hewitt, Aubrey Pleasant, Daniel Bullocks, Ron Rivera. Those are the 4 guys that I most have in mind as who could replace Gus Bradley as defensive coordinator, and I'm excited to see if any one of those guys ends up getting hired this offseason. Either way, the Colts have playmakers. We just need to find someone that is able to use them, and I think we should add another defensive back as well. I think, in my opinion, the perfect formula for this offseason defensively is new defensive coordinator, again, that can revamp some of the discipline and effort issues, can revamp the passing game and some of those pass coverages, and use the players he has in a better way. And I want to add a corner, a free agent corner through free agency or some trade, and I want to add a safety, namely maybe someone like Malachi Starks through the draft. I think that would be absolutely fantastic. That's what I want to see from the Colts. Because, again, we have playmakers, primarily up front. Laiatu Latu, Zaire Franklin, DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye. The front 7 has a lot of talent that, in my opinion, certainly is more than likely to return. EJ Speed is in a contract year. We'll see about him. But we'll see how many free agents with expiring contracts can come back. I hope to be finally seeing change and improvement, and it's essential that this new hire, whoever it is a success if the Colts are really going to elevate without blowing up the franchise first, because that's an outcome, right? One possible outcome for the next couple of years is the Colts just say, we're blowing it up. Chris Ballard's gone, and that's what a lot of people are calling for this year. Chris Ballard's gone, Shane Steichen's gone, Anthony Richardson. Get rid of everybody, like Pat McAfee said. Get rid of everybody, have a few core players to bring back, and then just reload and see where we can go from here, right? And I don't want that, because that is, and maybe that's the long-term best option, but that would be completely gutting this team, right? We'd be tanking and then trying to rebuild from the ground up. Sometimes that's the right approach. I just think that right now, with a team that is 8-9, 9-8 every year, maybe if we find a way to use, if Chris Ballard and if Jim Irsay are right and that they do like their guys and they are close to elevating, if we're going to trust that, and that's very hard to do, but if we're going to trust that, then maybe if we have the right defensive coordinator and we have a couple more pieces in the secondary, maybe this team is going to be able to reload and improve from here. We've got to see some more gutsy moves from Chris Ballard, and we've got to see a better defense, and we've got to see that through coaching and through personnel. I'm interested to see if either one improves this offseason and by how much and what that means for the future, because at the end of the day, all I want is good Colts defense and good Colts football.